What it do, YouTube? OG Mr. Mont. Uh, got a quick question about a couple of different fights that's possible. Uh, how many people actually want to see Earl Spence Jr. versus Keith Thurman? That's the first fight. The second fight, how many people really want to see Jamal Charlo versus Demetrius Andrade? Me personally, I want to see both of those fights. Now, both situations are different. They're completely different. The reasoning behind these fights not happening in the past, a couple of different reasons. Earl Spence Jr. versus Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman, who's been plagued with injuries over the past few years. Literally, even when he wasn't injured, didn't want to have nothing to do with Earl Spence Jr. Basically sit on national television and conceded first place to Earl Spence Jr. It was pathetic. Pathetic. Earl Spence just looked at him like, man, you ain't Second situation, Boo Boo Andrade and Jamal Charlo. Boo Boo Andrade actually had a fight signed with Jamal Charlo. And he pulled out of the fight the last minute. I think with like a week, 2 weeks left. Jamal had spent a bunch of money on training and at least that's what I heard. You know, I can't verify it, but the Charlos took it personal. And you can't blame them. So, you know, Jamal and Jamal, they twins. You can't screw over one without the other feeling it. So, they don't want to have nothing to do with Boo Boo Andrade. They don't want to do no business with him. And even though Jamal have, you know, mentioned Boo Boo's name as far as fighting him in the past. But, you know, they actually act like they have a hatred for Boo Boo Andrade. But that's a fight I want to see. Boo Boo Andrade calling Jamal Charlo out specifically. Nowadays, calling him out specifically. He ain't calling nobody else out. Jamal Charlo, that's who he want. What y'all think? Do y'all think Jamal Charlo has a legitimate gripe not to fight Boo Boo Andrade? Which I don't. I mean, what better way to get back at that motherfucker? Whoop his ass. As far as Earl Spence and Keith Thurman, man, I think they gonna force Earl to fight, or they was gonna force Earl to fight Keith Thurman, or either he gonna have to drop one of his belts. You know, he just had the car wreck, so I think that's who he was gonna be announcing that he was gonna fight. Can't be certain of that, but that's just who I think he was gonna fight. But Earl Spence has good reasoning for not wanting to have anything to do with Keith Thurman. Now Keith Thurman, all he talks about is fighting Earl Spence Jr. and Earl Spence didn't beat him for the belt and all that type of shit when you know you had plenty of opportunities to fight Earl Spence and you know you chickened out every time. Basically ran from him for years. But Jamal Charlo, man, you know, like I said, I can understand y'all being upset. But business is business, man. And like I said, what better way to get back at Demetrius Andrade? And the same with Earl Spence. If Keith Thurman kind of screwed you over as far as fighting you, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna put it like this: Keith Thurman held up the division for years. If Keith Thurman had did what he was supposed to, it could have been a fight for undisputed at 147 a couple years ago. But Keith Thurman, who was in this car accident and then elbow was messed up, and then he's over in Nepal or somewhere boxing in the street with the locals. You know, he held up the fight, held up the division for so long till the sanctioning body finally stripped him. I think it was the WBC that stripped him. But Boo Boo Andrade, I don't know. I think Jamal Charlo definitely need to go ahead and take that fight. And because Boo Boo at this point ain't really cutting you no slack. And in my opinion, if you don't fight him, you're a duck. You're a duck. That's too good of a fight, man. That's one of them, in my opinion, legacy-defining fights. That could be one of those fights of the year. You know. So, I think Jamal Charlo should take that fight. Make a ton of money. Either knock Demetrius Andrade out or get outboxed by Demetrius Andrade. Either way it go, I don't care. It's a good fight. And I don't care. You know, I don't care about the politics or none of that shit when it comes to that fight. Demetrius Andrade and Jamal Charlo. I want to see that fight. And I'll spend some pay-per-view money to see that fight. Jamal Charlo that's the perfect opportunity for y'all to get back at Demetrius Andrade, stomp his ass out. So that's how I feel as far as Keith Thurman and Earl Spence. I'd love to see the fight, but you know, that fight right there, I don't even think it's going. Don't get me wrong. Keith Thurman is a good fighter, but Keith Thurman ain't the fighter he used to be. So I honestly don't believe that fight goes 7-8 rounds before Earl catches up to him, and you know, everybody say a body shot, but I think he just gonna, within the first 6 or 7 rounds, he gonna walk Keith down and beat him up and eventually stop him to the head of the bodies. So, you know, I ain't really all that big on that fight, but the Jamal Charlo and the Demetrius Andrade fight, I want that fight. Jamal Charlo, take that goddamn fight, man. But that's all I got. It's your OG, Mr. Mont. Salute to the mighty LDBC, and I'm out.